Today on the Lazy RPG Talk Show, we have a bunch of new Sly Flourish news I wanted to talk about. The 5.2 system reference document is going to be released on Tuesday. Why does this matter to GMs? We're gonna dive into what is that? Do you even know what that is? If you don't know what the 5.2 SRD is, you can learn, and you can also learn why it matters in the role-playing game hobby and why it matters to GMs. Why would you want to pick a Creative Commons license over OGL? There's nothing we love to do more here on our role-playing game talk show than talk about copyright law. So we're going to do a little of that. I'm going to tell you how you can play the 6th edition of D&D right now. And I'm going to talk to you about how to help get your players to try other systems than whatever your favorite system is. And we are going to cover more questions from the Sly Flourish Patreon Q&A all today on the Lazy RPG Talk Show. I'm Mike Shea, your pal from Sly Flourish, here to talk about all things in tabletop role-playing games. So some Sly Flourish news. I want to shake things up a little bit from what I typically do, and we're going to talk about some of the things that have been going on in the world of Sly Flourish, the Empire of Sly Flourish. What's been happening? So, City of Arches. I have released my book, The City of Arches. The City of Arches is now available in hardcover in the United States and Canada. The boat that has the 800-ish copies that are going to Europe has arrived in Europe. So it's over there. But if you live in the US and Canada and you want to get a copy of the hardcover version of City of Arches, you can do so. And of course, everybody in the world can get the digital version of the City of Arches, which includes a markdown version, an EPUB version, a normal PDF, and a backgroundless PDF, along with all of the assets to run it in your favorite VTT of choice. But yeah, we are very eager to get to those copies in the hands of our non-North American backers. So the boat is there. The boat arrived. And now it's a matter of getting it from a boat to a truck to a warehouse to boxes and then back out again to people. So probably going to be throughout May to get those copies out there, because there's a lot of little tricky bits with getting this to all take place. But we're getting closer to the end for the City of Arches. One other thing for the City of Arches is it's going to be available on Shard Tabletop. It's the first virtual tabletop that we're looking at for City of Arches. We've been working with Hal over at Shard. I'm going to check in with him and see how things are going to get that. And I think everybody that backed it is going to get, I think it's half off the version of Shard. If you want it for Shard Tabletop, everybody that backed the Kickstarter will be able to get it for half off. So that's going to be cool. Over on the Sly Flourish Patreon, we have the Readings and Reflections podcast. This is a podcast for hero tier subscribers of the Sly Flourish Patreon, the $4 tier. I do a weekly 10-minute podcast where I read through the last week's article and give some background and thoughts and kind of dive into the topic a little bit more. And the last week's Readings and Reflections was how to quickly build a D&D 2024 character from the article of the same name that went out on the newsletter and is up on slyflourish.com. So if you want to read the article for free, you can go on Sly Flourish. If you want to hear me talk more about the article, you can subscribe to the Hero Tier and get the podcast. That's a whole separate podcast that I do. Also for Hero Tier patrons, I created a product called the Lower 12. The Lower 12 is a 2-page supplement of 12 dark gods that can be worshipped in the City of Arches. I did not spell them out specifically in the City of Arches. I thought it would be fun to kind of give some more detail into these 12 gods that exist. Lots of fun, lots of like overlaps between other gods. So for example, we have Thrasis, the Dragon Queen, clearly a stand-in for Tiamat, or Takasis, if you want to use the Dragonlance name. We have Vorashuron, the spider, kind of like Loth, a male-ish version of Loth. Father Grimskull, who could fall in for your Vecna and other things. Fun one, I created a god called Professor Nitrox, which I think is a great name. Sounds like a drug, right? Sounds like, maybe, oh man, the cat yacked. I need to go get some Nitrox and clean that up. So we have Professor Nitrox, who is a artificer who became a god, but is like a half mechanical god thing. And it's for mechanists and artificers and stuff like that. Evil mechanists and evil artificers worship Professor Nitrox. So lots of fun little gods, little quick descriptions that include like the different titles for them, the different domains that follow, a symbol, and a description. So this is a supplement. This is, if you are watching this, you can actually get this on your Hero Tier rewards page on Patreon. I'm also announcing it next week. So I'm sending a patron note to all Hero Tier subscribers. Hey, this Lower 12 supplement is now available. But if you're seeing this, you can actually go find it on your Hero Tier rewards page. So fun little supplement, kind of a little side project that I've been doing, getting away from the Key of Worlds scenarios. But I'm getting back to that. I have one Key of Worlds one Key of World scenario left to do. This coming week's Sly Flourish article is the Oracle die. I love talking about the Oracle die. The Oracle die is the idea of like taking a die and rolling and let it kind of determine randomy sort of things that could be going on in the world. I talk about how to do it with like a tableless Oracle die, some other ideas. So that's going to be the article coming out. If you're watching this video, it's already up on Sly Flourish. And right now you can subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. Link is in the show notes to do so. And it will be emailed. This article, the Oracle die, will be emailed directly to your inbox. So you won't miss it. That's a great thing. Also, the next week, that will be the readings and reflections for Patreon will be about the Oracle die. So you can get that too. I don't remember if I talked about it before. I know I've talked about the fact that I have a system resource, a Lazy GM's resource document, a Creative Commons release document that includes a lot of material that I wanted to give out to the community, to the RPG hobbyists, to other producers so that they could build stuff for it. And I'm always adding kind of new stuff for it. I don't remember if I talked about the fact, I think I might have, but I'll bring it up again. The Village of White Sparrow. So the Village of White Sparrow is actually the village that's part of Sly Flourish's Fantastic Adventures. And it is now released under a Creative Commons license. And you can add this particular, location into your world for free. You don't need to license it. You can build off of it. You can do whatever you want. And I included an adventure called the Nightblade. So that means if you ever need, and the Dale, who's doing the free 5e project, was able to take this and put it in their book. So there's like a starting city or starting town and a starting adventure that you could put into any product that you've got. So I wanted to release all of that out here. We've included a Creative Commons licensed map, a CC0 map. So you have like a kind of a loose map for the place and descriptions and everything else. So I'm always adding new stuff. In fact, I add so much stuff that sometimes I forget what I have in here. And an example is the random underground connectors. So this is funny. I realize that we have random locations, we have random monuments, we have stuff, but what about like the ways that you travel underground? And so I created that. It was actually another patron feature, but then I said this really ought to go into the Creative Commons too, so that other people can use it. So I created this 1d20 list of underground connectors. These are the edges of your graph network. They are the pathways between your points in a point crawl when you're going underground. And the fun bit, so there's 20 of them, like long abandoned sewers, spiraling shaft, underwater passage, ice tunnel, so on, right? But the fun bit is you can roll twice on it and mix the two of them together. And that's really fun. I'll do a quick one right here. Of course, I've rolled the same number twice. 8 and 5. So massive worm-carved passageways that also go to a spiraling shaft. So a spiraling shaft, I kind of think is like a big spiral mine. But now you have like, what about a spiraling shaft where you can see these worm connections that go all around, or a dead worm who spirals down and you have to like crawl through his decayed husk in order to get down to the lower area. So you can roll twice. And when you roll twice on them, you really get to add a unique flavor, right? It takes a D20 list and turns it into like a D400 list, not quite 400 because you roll 2 5s. What does that mean? But pretty close, right? You can roll. You get a lot of advantage rolling multiple times on the same table to really add a lot of flavor to it. So that is also released in this same document. You can find this document known as the Lazy GM's resource document on slyflourish.com. I will link to it in the show notes. And really fun to do. I'm very happy to do this. This is one of the things that I do that like every time I add to it, I feel good. I feel good about myself because I love giving things away. One of the other projects I've been working on recently is going back and creating Markdown and EPUB versions of older books. I particularly want to do it for the Lazy DM's Companion and the Lazy DM's Workbook, but I also recently did it for Ruins of the Grendelroot. So the Ruins of the Grendelroot now includes both Markdown and EPUB. It always had EPUB, but now it has a Markdown version of Ruins of the Grendelroot as well. I'll give a hint if you're watching. It's going to be on sale soon. So when it goes on sale, that's a great time to pick it up and get the Markdown version. But if you already have it, you should be able to get the Markdown version because we added it to DriveThruRPG. So if you have the links to DriveThruRPG, you can get it there. It was added and it was announced to people that had it on DriveThruRPG. We also announced it to everybody who bought it on the store, but we could only reach the people on the store who opted into email. So if you own a digital copy of Ruins of the Grendelroot and you did not get the Markdown version, you don't know where to get the Markdown version, email support@slyflourish.com and we'll get you set up. Just give us some kind of proof, screenshot of an email or something that shows that you had purchased Ruins of the Grendelroot, and we will get the Markdown version of Ruins of the Grendelroot to you if you didn't find it. But first thing to do is go check your DriveThruRPG library, because we updated it there. So that's definitely a way to get it. But I want to do this for all my books. I want every book that I have to be available in Markdown. Probably what I'm doing is as we get ready to put a book on sale, one of the things I'm going to do is do the conversion to Markdown then. And that way we can not only talk about the fact that's on sale, but talk about a new version of the book that we have available for that sale, recognizing that everybody who already owns it can also get that same thing. But two of the books in particular I'm really looking forward to doing this with are the Lazy DM's Companion and the Lazy DM's Workbook. Both of those don't even have an EPUB version. So my goal is to work with those and make an EPUB and a Markdown version of both of those books. It takes a lot of work. So and I'm busy with a lot of other projects right now. So I don't know how long it's going to take for me to do that, but it's going to work. Sly Flourish Discord server is always fun. I thought it'd be kind of fun to just talk about some of the conversations going on there. We had a big conversation about how hiding works in D&D that was so bad that I almost got moderated out by one of the moderators of the server myself. Even though I own the server, I almost got moderated out. So that was fun. And and a lot of people are like, I can't believe they're still arguing about hiding. And I'm like, we're not arguing, like we're learning. So that I thought was a lot of fun. We have a dedicated D&D 2024 thread over there. So we talk a lot about D&D 2024, and the hiding was like, I think ate up a whole day, so much so that people in other channels were like, I can't believe they're still talking about hiding over there. But I was like, well, there's something to talk about. But it brought up a lot of interesting conversations about heavy rules kind of systems for hiding versus sort of the OSR style of hiding. The RPG business chat has been all abuzz with information about the new 5.2 SRD and what that means. Some other stuff that's been going on there. Always, and we always have good advice that's being passed around in the workshop, and good, what I love is the general coffee shop chatter that goes on in the lounge over there. Great fiction recommendations is also another fantastic thread. I think it's a full dedicated channel that we have over on the Discord server, where the rule is you're not allowed to yuck anyone else's yum. So if you say, hey man, I really love Thor Ragnarok, no one is allowed to go in there and say, I didn't like Thor Ragnarok because I didn't like how his hair looked, right? Or whatever. We have a specific rule that you're not allowed to immediately respond to somebody else. You're not allowed to respond to somebody else at all by saying you didn't like the thing that they liked. You can, you are free to feel how you feel about it, but no yucking yums is a hard rule, and it has made that channel so much nicer. Because guess what? If you like a thing, you don't really need to have somebody come and tell you why they didn't like it. Like turns out that that's not really neat. Great conversations we got going on over in the Discord server. So that is all the current Sly Flourish news. That's everything that's been going on in the world of Sly Flourish. What about the wider hobby? Well, for me, one of the biggest pieces of news, something that I think I've been looking forward to for a long time, a lot of other people I think have been looking forward to for a long time, is Wizards of the Coast releasing, and they announced the release of the 5.2 system reference document. These are the D&D 2024 rules for the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual, a subset of the rules that are in there that are going to be released in a big document that is going to be open in a Creative Commons attribution license. So if you're not familiar with all this, essentially what it means is that they are putting out a great big PDF document, and then everything in that document will be licensed out so that you can include it in any of your own material without having to ask their permission. All you have to do is reference where you got it from. You can use it in commercial work. You can transform the work. You can mix it with other work. You can add on to your own stuff. And the only restriction on it is that you have to reference the original work. It is really close to a full putting it out in basically the public domain. The only restrictions that you really have on it are that idea that you have to reference the original work. There's some other restrictions as well, but nothing that gets in the way of anybody being able to build a lot. So we've been waiting for it. They said they were going to do it. They mentioned that they were going to do it more than a year ago when they were talking about building the D&D 2024 rules. They said we are absolutely going to put it out in 5.2 SRD. We are going to put out this new one, but we were wondering yeah, but when? And there's, recent chatter has been like, hey, we're still watching. And so enough people were watching that they're going to do it. You can find a link to EN World where we talk all about this. I think I posted some stuff there where people have been talking about this a lot. So it's coming out Tuesday. We're going to talk a lot about it when it comes out. So very happy that it's coming out. Very excited that it's coming out. And we're going to talk a lot more about what it means. One of the things that I think is important, this is one of those few times where Wizards of the Coast, where a company in general can do something that is both really commercially beneficial to them and also really good for the community at the same time. It's kind of rare to find those circumstances where it isn't a balance between what's good for the hobby overall and what's good commercially. Sometimes there's a balance between those two things. But in this case, it's one where it is both a big benefit to them commercially and a big benefit to us as community members. And the benefit to them as a publisher is more people writing directly for their new rule set will make their rule set more popular, and it allows them to see which products do the best against their new rule set and bring them into D&D Beyond. I'm not going to get into all the kind of D&D Beyond topic about it. I have lots of thoughts about D&D Beyond, but if you know me, if you've been following, you know some of my thoughts on D&D Beyond. But it is definitely a benefit for them because then publishers are going to be writing against their own system, which then they can better integrate with the D&D 2024 stuff they have in D&D Beyond. It's definitely a big benefit to us, to them. But it is also a great big benefit to us, and not just to people like me who publish products, but also to GMs. And I want to clarify why I think having a 5.2 system reference document, essentially the D&D 2024 rules, in an open license, why they are so beneficial for GMs who don't even publish. And so I have 4 big reasons. One is, it certainly means creators overall are freer to make more products for all of 5e, not just D&D 2020, but all of 5e, and that you as a GM get to benefit from all of those creators who are building stuff using this material. And it could be all kinds of things. It could be entire new systems. It could be subsets of systems. It can be accessories. It can be new subclasses, spells, monsters, magic items, all sorts of different things can be built off of this rule set, which then you as a GM get to dig through and choose and pick what products you want and what stuff you want to run in your own game. So that's really fantastic. Another big benefit is this is a PDF of the rules for D&D 2024 that you can then hand to anybody else legally. You can have a copy on your hard drive. You can put a copy up on your website. I plan to host my own copy on my own website, just so I know I've got it, regardless of whether the URLs change at D&D Beyond. I have my copy that I can link to. You can have your copy that you link to, but you can also give it to your friends. So if you've got people who are just getting started and they're like, I don't know if I want to invest $50 in a player's handbook or certainly $150 in the whole system, you can say, well, here's a way to try it out. Check out this system reference document. You can get it for free and you can read through it and you can see a lot of what's going on. Now, we don't know how, like the kind of formatting of the system reference document, is it going to be friendly for a new player is a question. Like, is it going to be written so that it helps you understand what the game is about? We're going to see, but my expectation, and certainly this was true with the 5.1 SRD, it was actually a pretty good way to go read about what the game was like. So that being able to hand that PDF to anybody is really, really valuable. Another major feature is that new versions of the game can come out forever. So because this 5.2 SRD is out there, it means all of the stuff that's in it is available to use forever in any new products that come out from here on out. I see a lot of people lamenting the idea that there really hasn't been a strong successor to the 4th edition of D&D, for example, because the 4th edition never had a system reference document. That's not true. There are so many different versions of 5e that are available. And now there can be new versions of 5e that are based on the 2024 rules too. That's a lot of new games, not just new supplements for your existing game, but new games entirely that can be built off of this new platform. And when you think about how much Wizards invested in this rule set, paying for the salaries of the people that worked on it, the amount of hours that went into all the playtest documents, the number of hours that went into playtest documents that we put into it, playtesting and sending our feedback and then having that put in. I mean, I don't know that $1 million is out of hand, right? It could have cost a lot of money. When you think about all of the effort that went into the stuff that we're getting in this book, I don't know that $1 million is on the outside, right? Like, small publishers surely wouldn't have paid that much, but Wizards might have paid that much in order to make this the material that's in this document. And that's now available to the whole world forever. That's really, really powerful. And then the last thing is that there's now going to be a much wider range of digital tools available. We can have character builders. We can have monster builders. One of the first things I'm going to do, I'm hoping to do this very soon after it comes out, is I have the 5e Artisanal Monster Database, which is a feature to patrons of Sly Flourish that includes open licensed monsters, open licensed 5e monsters. So this is the database that includes monsters from Level Up Advanced 5e, Tome of Beasts 1, 2, and 3, the Creature Codex, and Kobold Press's Black Flag. I am really eager to add the D&D 2024 monsters to this as well. So then you can type in Cult Fanatic, and have 3 different Cult Fanatics, A5e, Black Flag, or the 5.2 SRD, all of which are available in HTML. all of which are available in Markdown so that you can grab it and throw it right into your Obsidian notes. This database is one that is a fully self-hostable, fully downloadable. You can run it on your local desktop, and you can search for I think it's like 2,000 monsters. How many monsters is in here? It's a ton. Yeah, 2,500 monsters, and we're going to add hundreds more. I'm really hoping to be able to quickly add the new D&D 2024 monsters. I actually spent a good chunk of my day yesterday on Saturday prepping all of the code that I need in order to do conversions to get monsters into this database. So I'm hoping to be able to add those monsters pretty soon. Tools like this can be available to everybody because the system reference document includes those monsters. So that is going to be a very exciting thing. Those are the things that you can get. And that's just one tool of many that anybody can put out, anybody can build in order to really enhance the game. So those are reasons why having a system reference document is valuable to GMs. It helps GMs give them better tools, give them a format that they can send to players, and know that there are new products that can be built off of it and new entire systems that can be built off of it. The number of people asking why this wasn't released under the Open Gaming License is too damn high. Big discussions over on EN World about this have been going on, and I've been really enjoying them. But I was very surprised to see more people saying, well, is Wizards going to release this under the OGL? Should they release it under the OGL? No, they shouldn't. And good news, they're not going to. I don't know why anybody would want that. Well, I do know. There's one reason why people would want it, and it's not an illegitimate reason. I just don't agree with it. But first of all, one of the reasons that we got into the whole OGL mess in the first place is that the OGL was owned by Wizards of the Coast. The license agreement itself was owned by Wizards of the Coast, and they themselves tried to break their own license agreement in order to take back the license. Why would we want that again? Will they do it again? I doubt it. Could they never do it? No, they could try it again, right? Companies could get bought out, new people could come in, and they could try it again. It's way harder to do that with the Creative Commons license. The Creative Commons license is used on billions of creative objects out on the internet. Billions. It's used by hundreds of thousands of companies, including some of the biggest companies in the world. Release stuff under Creative Commons licenses. And use stuff that other people released under Creative Commons licenses, which means that license is a far stronger license than the OGL is. It's more proven than the OGL. It is, there's a lot of more attention applied. As big as the OGL thing was, if anybody ever tried to violate or tried to change the Creative Commons license, it would be a huge deal. So the fact that it's in a Creative Commons license is a much better thing. The one argument against it is that because it is not under what they refer to as a viral license, means that downstream producers are under no obligation to release their own stuff. I don't care. I don't care that downstream producers can't or have the freedom. I think it's good that they have the freedom to decide what they want to release from their own material and how they want to release it. I don't think the top of the food chain should be responsible to dictate to the bottom of the food chain how they have to license their material. That's why I'm not really a fan of the ORC license. The ORC license is a license developed by Azora Law, financed by Paizo, to create a new, stronger version of the OGL, and it is a much better version of the OGL. And, I've only seen a couple of people use it. Obviously, Paizo uses it. Kobold Press uses it for Tales of the Valiant. But most everybody else has kind of moved to the Creative Commons license and uses that. And I don't like the idea of a license that dictates downstream that you also have to use the license. I certainly wouldn't want somebody like Wizards of the Coast dictating to everybody downstream how they could do it. And the reason why is that viral licenses are a much bigger benefit to the top of the food chain than they are to the bottom, because the top of the food chain can restrict what they release. The bottom of the food, anyone else down below cannot. The example was, let's say that Wizards of the Coast decided to release the 5.1 SRD under the ORC license, or the 5.2 SRD under the ORC license. Well, they themselves don't have to put their other subclasses in their own reference document, right? They can say, oh no, this stuff is in the player's handbook. We're not releasing that. And that's almost certainly what they will do. They're not going to release all the subclasses in the 5.2 SRD. I'm almost sure of that. And then, but everybody downstream, if you decide to produce subclasses, you can't say, oh, I also want to hold some of my subclasses back. No, you have to release all your subclasses. Any mechanical features have to be passed down. So the top of the food chain is not releasing everything. I think Paizo actually is doing it correctly. Paizo, I think, releases everything in Pathfinder 2 Revise, which is the one that's now under the Orc license. I think they've released everything under the Orc license. I think that if you buy the physical book, it says everything in here is available under the Orc license. So they are at least at their top of the food chain saying, yes, we are not releasing everything. It's something Kobold Press is not doing. Kobold Press said, no, we're going to hold stuff back from the Black Flag system reference document, but anybody who uses Black Flag has to release everything. That I'm not a fan of that. So I'm not a big fan of viral licenses. And that's why I think them putting on a Creative Commons license is great. One of the other conversations that I've seen being thrown around in a lot of different spots, I've certainly seen it over on the World, I've seen it in other places. It's kind of interesting. We're in a weird spot for the hobby, which I kind of like, which is now that the core books are out, now that the 3 D&D 2024 core books are out, there was so much conversation about those books. So much, kind of like speculation about what it was going to do and everything like that. And then they're out and we're all like, well, what now? I guess we go back to playing our games again, which is great, and talking about our games, which is great, right? I love playing and talking about our games. That's what we want to do. But then I saw some new people, and I feel like they sort of want that energy back of like, hey, let's have the new thing. And what I've seen are people that are saying they're already starting to talk about what 6e, D&D 6e is going to be like. And I don't need a D&D 6e. I'm perfectly happy with the books that I've gotten. I've got many. But some people really want a D&D 6e. Well, guess what? You can play D&D 6e right now. And I'm going to tell you how. That's my bit of clickbait. That is almost certainly going to be a clickbait thumbnail for today. But here's my premise. Now that D&D 2024 is out, and people are already speculating about wishing for a D&D 6e, and I hear people saying things like they want the WotC design team to take D&D in an entirely new direction. They want designers who are unconstrained by commercial trends, and they want to avoid the middle-of-the-road safe design ideas. They want to see something new and wild and radical. I've heard people say, like, you know what I really want in a D&D 6e? I want a classless system, a levelless system, that doesn't have attribute scores anymore. And you're like, that's not D&D, right? Or people, they're not going to do that, right? But, they're not going to do that, but also that really wouldn't feel like D&D. But what are we really asking? Well, we're really asking, like, I want to see what the designers of D&D would make if they had the gloves taken off. Well, guess what? So many of them already have. And there are versions of D&D out there created by the same people who created previous versions of D&D that you can play right now. We already have that. Many of the designers of D&D over the past 20 years, and probably going back even further, have shown us exactly where they want to take D&D when the gloves are off. And I'm going to give you four examples. The D&D 6es that you could look at right now are 13th Age by Jonathan Tweet, who was a lead designer of D&D 3rd edition, and Rob Hainso, who is a lead designer of D&D 4th edition. They specifically said 13th Age was their love letter to D&D. It was the D&D the two of them wanted to make. Both of them having had a ton of experience working on D&D, and this is the one that they wanted. If you wanted to see what they wanted for D&D, 13th Age. And they have a new version of 13th Age that's coming out, but you can take a look at the old one. It's there too. Rob Schwab, who is heavily involved in the design of 4th edition and 5th edition D&D, has Shadow the Weird Wizard. That's his love letter to D&D. It's a fantastic RPG. I got to play a session of it recently. I'm probably going to run a Shadow of the Weird Wizard campaign when one of my other campaigns ends up. And it's a really cool look at like a D20 fantasy game that's done in the style that Rob wanted for it, right? If you want to know what a previous designer of 4th and 5th edition D&D wanted with an RPG, check out Shadow of the Weird Wizard. Monty Cook was a lead designer of 3rd edition of D&D and was a consultant on 5th edition of D&D. And we know what his version of D&D looks like because we have Numenera. Numenera is a high science fantasy RPG, D20 based RPG, tremendous production quality, beautiful, beautiful work, excellent writing, really fun design. It's a fun look. Now, it's not necessarily my favorite system, and I definitely think that there are criticisms I'd have of it, but guess what? There's criticisms that I have of every RPG, and certainly of every version of D&D. I've had my criticisms on that. But that is also available. Dusk City Outlaws, right? Dusk City Outlaws is a heist-based RPG created by Rodney Thompson, who is one of the designers on D&D 4th edition. So those right there, you have a pile of former designers for Wizards of the Coast that all worked on previous versions of D&D, who all then made their own RPGs that was made by them with no oversight, no drive and direction of marketing or how it's going to work with other things, or like 4th edition, oh, you've got to use it to get the new Warcraft people in. Right? These are the versions of the game that they wanted. These are the purest versions of the game that the designers had, and we have them right now. We already saw what their version of D&D would be like if they were doing 6th edition, because we already have it. They've already done it, and we already see it. But Mike, no one knows about these games, right? The big issue is no one knows about it. Well, guess what? You know about it right now because I told you. And guess what? You could tell other people. You can go out there and talk about some of these other systems and try them out. Pick up the PDFs when they're on sale on Bundle of Holding or on the Humble Bundle, right? Look at them, maybe run them. And we're going to get into how to get your group to actually try these systems. But now you know. Now you know there's lots of other systems. And you can go out there, and when people say like, boy, I'd love to know what 6th edition is going to be like, you could say like, well, if you really liked 4th edition, check out 13th Age, right? One other thing to keep in mind is I brought these specific examples up because these are specific designers who worked on previous versions of D&D, but there are so many designers that are excellent, wonderful designers that have made stuff who have also made their own RPGs outside of these. There's hundreds of them, and they're all really, really good. So lots of different ways that we can see how the game has evolved. Again, you can pick them: Shadowdark, Dolmenwood, Cairn, Fantasy Age, Pathfinder. There's so many of them out there, and they're made by really, really excellent designers and loved by many players. So you don't need to worry about it. Draw Steel, right? Draw Steel and Daggerheart. My friend James Intercasso has worked a ton on 4th edition D&D, a ton on 5th edition D&D, and is the lead designer of Draw Steel. And it's based on a lot of the stuff that they loved in 4th edition and want to bring a new game. Daggerheart, designed by and put out by the Critical Role team. They've sure got a lot of experience with 5th edition, and they had a game that was really based around the style they wanted, and that's Daggerheart. We get to see all that stuff. So there's many versions of RPGs outside of these, but I picked on these because they are specifically done by previous designers of D&D. So now you know, because I told you. You don't have to say, but no one else knows about the games. I'm not talking about anyone else. I'm talking about you and me, right? And you can go out and talk to other people about it and tell them about the RPG. So no, it doesn't. The fact that other people don't know about them does not matter because you know about it now. We're just talking about us right now. And you can tell other people about it, right? You can tell them about it. But Mike, I can't get any of my players to play anything but 5e. All my players only love 5e. Yes. So what can you do about that? We're going to dive into that particular, but I'm going to offer some quick ones for you. Talk to them. Ask to run a session or two of these games. Say, hey, I just picked up Numenera, and I was wondering if we wanted to try a short adventure for 3 sessions on Numenera, and we'll do it between sessions, right? Or we'll do it between campaigns. They're a lot more likely to say, sure, I'll give it a shot. If you only start off by, I just want to run a couple of sessions. Now, of course, you have to have a group that's willing to trust you. We're gonna talk about that. But the main thing is like get started by having them talk about it. But what is the actual problem that we run into when we try to get players to play systems that are other than 5e and other than D&D in particular? And it's also the same problem with Starbucks. Let's talk about Starbucks. So there's a reason why Starbucks sells $6 coffee and you can't sell a $6 coffee, right? This is something that I think RPG creators lament is my thing is just as good as that other thing and nobody comes and buys my thing. And the answer is you don't have a 50-year legacy of the most popular brand in D&D behind you. Starbucks has spent God knows how much money getting it to the point where people recognize Starbucks and they know that if they go into Starbucks and they get a latte, they know what they're going to get. They're willing to get it. You can't crash your black van into somebody walking down the street, jump out in the hood, grab them by the lapels and say, buy my $6 coffee and expect to get anything other than maced. You're probably going to get maced, right? You're scaring them. Don't do that. They don't know who you are. They don't know anything about your $6 coffee. You've built no reputation with them whatsoever. People buy Starbucks and McDonald's and Coke because they know what they're going to get. They've had a lifetime of marketing to build up that trust that other games don't have. And the same is true for D&D. D&D is a lifestyle and lifetime brand. D&D as a brand is older than the average age of the people playing it. D&D is old, right? It's that old. It's old enough that more people are playing it now who weren't even born when it came out. So it's been around for a long time. It has a lot of cred. And that's why players are gravitating towards it. And it's important for us to recognize that fact, that people are drawn to D&D because they've had a lifetime of connecting it. So what do you do in order to kind of deal with that, right? What do we do? Well, there's a few things we do. One, go ahead, and if you have trouble running games, first of all, I like 5e. I love running 5e games, and I love running D&D games. So I'm perfectly happy running D&D and 5e games with my groups. And you shift the brand over as you're running your D&D games. This is one approach. There's probably many approaches, but I'm going to offer one, which is after you've run a lot of games for the same group, you've shifted the brand over from D&D to you and your friends. And now the brand now belongs to you and your friends. They trust you. They know what kind of DM you are. They know what happens when they show up for a game. They know the other players. They know what's going on. And now the brand has shifted. And now that the brand has shifted over to you, now is when you can say, now you pull the puppy dog sale. Right? I checked with my wife because my wife works at a local animal, or she volunteers at a local animal shelter. And I was like, can I talk about the puppy dog sale? She's like, yeah, you can talk about it. It totally works. I was like, okay, I'll talk about the puppy dog sale. The puppy dog sale is, you don't say, hey, here's this dog you're going to have to take care of for the next 14 years. Right? You say, hey, here's this dog. Try it out for a few days. Try it out for like 5 days. Right? And you can sort of do this, like, this is the reason they call them foster failures. And a foster failure is like, hey, just foster this dog for 5 days. Well, trust me, if you can live with a dog for 5 days, you could probably live with that dog for the rest of your life, right? Or the rest of its life anyway. And yet the sale worked because you didn't have to commit to anything more than those 5 days, even though it worked. The same is true with RPGs. You don't go in saying, hey, how would you guys like to throw away D&D? I'm tired of running it. I don't want to run D&D anymore, and I want to shift us all to running Cairn. I want to play the lightweight version of Cairn. Oh, by the way, and they're like, well, what's Cairn? And you're like, oh, Cairn is this great RPG. You have far less mechanical character options, and you die a lot more often. And they're like, I don't think I want to do that. And also, I'm not bashing Cairn. Cairn is actually really, really cool. I cannot wait to get my version of Cairn. But there's a way to sell a game, and there's a way not to sell a game. And that first thing that you want to do is say, hey, I have this new game called Cairn that I'd like to try out. Would you guys be willing to run a couple of sessions of it? And you probably want to run a couple of sessions. Somewhere, I think like 2 to 4 sessions is about the minimum needed to really understand a game. Like I ran one session of Shadow the Weird Wizard. We really didn't understand that full system. You really want to play it for a little while to get a better understanding for the system. But players, especially players that you've been playing with for a while, are going to be a lot more likely to say, oh, you're not giving up on D&D. You just want to play Cairn for a few sessions. Sure, I'm willing to play 4 sessions of Cairn. I had multiple groups where I was able to do this. Hey, would we like to try this out? Yeah. Now my groups trust me enough that even if I say, hey, I'd like to run a longer term campaign, like, hey, how would you guys feel about running a Shadow the Weird Wizard campaign? It might go as many as 20 to 22 sessions. They're like, yeah, we'll give it a shot, right? We'll see how it goes. Especially helps if I say, hey, and if we're finding out that this isn't really for us, we can just bail on it. Right? If we don't like it, we can just bail on it and try something else. Giving people that is a lot less, it builds a lot less of a commitment with them, and it makes it a lot easier to try these games out. Now, a reality is they might not like the game, and they might want to go back to D&D anyway, right? I go back to D&D all the time. I've run a whole bunch of different RPGs, and now I'm back to 5e again because it's really good. I really like it. Right? My friends like it. I like it. It's really good. So it's not automatic that if you say, oh, if I get my friends to all play Cairn and we really like it, that all my friends are going to shift over to Cairn and we're never going back to D&D again. I might have situations where some of the players are like, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And other players are like, yeah, I kind of like the crunchiness, right? Even we played Shadowdark. I played almost a year-long Shadowdark campaign, and we really had a good time. And my partner said, that was really fun. I would totally play it again. But I'm also looking forward to the mechanical crunch of a deep 5e system too. And so we're like, okay, we're going to play that too, right? So those are some of the tricks, right? Those are some of the ways to try to help, get players to be more willing to try other systems that you might want to try out. Another one is like you might end up where you have some players that want to try it or some players that want to play it and other players that don't, and you might have to split groups up, right? You might have to say, okay, our main group, we're going to continue with 5e. Hey, would you 3, maybe I can get 2 others and we can play, another day of the week, we can play this other game, right? Like you can do little tricks like that to do it. But when I asked GMs about this over on like a YouTube question about it, and I said like, how do you get your players to play other games? by far, the majority of people said, my group trusts me to run the games that we're going to run because they built a different brand. The brand is not D&D anymore. You didn't go to a bunch of random people and say, hey, how about instead of D&D, you want to run Karen with me? And they're like, well, I don't know who you are, and I don't know what Karen is, so no, right? You didn't drive the black van up and smash into the wall and jump out with your hood and be like, you're playing Karen. And they're like, no, I want to play 5e. So instead, what you did is you build a reputation with a group so they know you, they trust you, they love the games that they're playing, and you say, hey, for a couple of sessions, how would you like to try this other thing? I think that's the best approach to getting people to try other games. And that is your approach to see. If you want to see what D&D 6e would look like from a bunch of different designers who worked on it, this is your opportunity to see what these other versions of D&D are like. And they're really, really good. They're fun. They're fun versions of the game. Let's do some patron questions. Over on Sly Flourish, we have the Patreon Q&A. Every month, people can post new questions there. I answer every question every Friday. And then some of those questions come here where we talk about them on the show. Kush P says, I have a problem with my current group in that they never actually check or look around for things like traps or secrets in any of the dungeon rooms that they explore. This has led to them missing out on several cool items, as well as just outright taking permanent damage and debuffs from traps. I even hint about the traps sometimes very directly as well. How do I go about making sure that they respect the traps and secrets and don't just run through rooms without a second thought? It's a good question. And actually, this is one where I tend, so if we need to do a couple of things here. Let's do some brain exercises for a moment. One is understanding what the core mechanic is. Obviously, we're talking about 5th edition. 5th edition, very likely, we're talking about D&D. It's understanding the core mechanic of D&D. GM describes the situation. Players describe what they want to do. The GM adjudicates the results. Part of that adjudication is if there's a random chance that something may or may not work out right, you roll an ability check to do it. Like, if the GM says you enter a room, it's an old office, you see a crumbling desk, there's bookshelves on the books, you can see webs, moving around in the webs and dust motes swirling around the room. What do you want to do? And the players say, well, I want to search. And you say, oh, search what? Right? And so you have the back and forth. And they say, well, I want to see if I can figure out why, what's going on with the dust. Why is it moving around so much? Like, I don't, and you say, okay, roll a perception check for me. Right? And they roll a perception check. And you say, you figure out that the dust that's moving the motes is actually coming from cracks in the walls. There's air shooting out from some of these cracks. You figure that out and you're able to figure out that there is actually a false wall, right? So on. That's a typical approach. A lot of times that approach doesn't really work. And what I have definitely done instead is I skip that what do you want to do step, because a lot of times players are not understanding what you're describing. They're missing out on what you're describing. So you could say anybody that wants to can make a perception check, and then they roll the checks, and then whoever got the highest, you'd be like, hey, you can figure out that the dust is not moving necessarily from the air currents that are coming in, and it gives them more hints. So I don't think it's really that big a deal for you to call for checks. Some people freak out. They're like, that is not how it's supposed to play. You don't call for a check until a player describes what they want to do. Also, players can't call for checks, right? That the way it's supposed to work is GM describes what happens or describes the situation. The player describes what they want to do, and the GM calls for a check if a check is needed. The player can't say, I want to roll a perception check. And you say, no. What do you want to do? And they say, I want to search a room. And you go, great, roll a perception check, right? So that's the style. But there's another little angle to this. And Kush P, I wonder if this is a question for you, which is online versus in-person play. Are you playing in person or are you playing online? The difference is that I believe since COVID, since we've spent a lot of time online talking with people online are a lot less likely to speak up, right? They're always worried about overstepping somebody else, and lag on audio still exists. And conversations online can be a real chore. Ginny D did a wonderful video where she talked about the etiquette for online play that covers a lot of this. But one of the very easy things you can do is instead of saying, what do you guys want to do? You say, Rosa, what do you want to do? Right? KO, what do you want to do? Lana, what do you want to do? You call on the players. And this is where you can use a Shadow Dark style, always on initiative. What I do is on my mat in front of me at my game, even if I'm running online, I will still do this. I write all of the character names in sort of a semicircle. I orient them towards the players. So if I have players around the table, I will orient the character names around the players. Just helps me to connect the character to the player. But I'm always looking at that list. And that way I can go through and be like, who has not done anything recently? And I can say Gaudenzia. So you enter the old forest, you can hear, sounds going out and the trail is overwritten. What would you like to do? And then they know who's up. And they know that no one else is supposed to talk about Gaudenzia, particularly for online play. So a couple suggestions that I would have. One, it's okay to bring checks to them if they're not coming up with it. And two is call on specific players for what they want to do rather than asking the group what they want to do. Those are big ones. Sounds like what you're doing is good though, of like, hey, always lean towards revealing too much than revealing too little. Don't hold your cards close because players know a lot less about what's going on than you do. And their characters know more about what's going on than they do, than the players do. So tell the characters what they would notice. Tell the characters what they would notice because of who they are. One thing I noticed with video games, so I'm playing Solasta, really fun 5e based video game called Solasta, and obviously I played the hell out of Baldur's Gate 3. Both of those games have checks just happen spontaneously. You walk by a thing, you roll a check, something happens. I think we can bring that to our tabletop game too. I think it's okay for the GM to just call for checks. And they might not even know why they're calling for a check. It's just something they might notice. I think that can work out. Aaron W. says, in Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, a section on lazy campaign building, there is a step for grim portents. How does this step mesh with only planning for the next session? That's a good question. Now we're getting to some deep Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master sort of stuff. So grim portents is actually a term that I took from the game Dungeon World back when I wrote Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. And I've changed the lingo a little bit in how I refer to it because I feel like the term grim portent, while it's flavorful and rich, also makes it harder to understand what we're actually talking about. So I used to have fronts and grim portents were the idea. A front was basically some moving thing, usually an antagonist of the characters that's going in a direction. It's sort of like a weather front, right? Like, something's moving in, right? Something is moving. And that might be a villain. It might be, a giant asteroid that's going to crash down on the planet. It could be just, bad arcane storms. It could be lots of different things. I've switched that over to villain. I just call those villains now because most of the time they are a sentient entity, right? But a villain could be something that isn't sentient, right? But I think people understand having villains more than they understand having a front. I don't have to explain a villain, but I do have to explain a front. A grim portent is sort of a sign that the characters see that something is happening. I've switched those over to be kind of quests that the villains go on. Right? Like, what are the things that the alert the players to the fact that the villain is moving on? Some of those are quests that they go on. Some of those are the goal that they have. But how you expose those to the players is the question. And this is where you get into planning for the next session. So it is valuable, I think, when you're running a campaign to have that understanding of who are the villains. Three is a good number of villains, by the way, 3 different villains. What do those villains want? Like, what are they trying to accomplish? And then what steps are they taking to accomplish those goals, right? And you don't have to have, usually 1 goal and 3 steps for villains. So you have 3 villains, a goal for each villain, and 3 steps that they're taking. City of Arches, my book has villains that have those goals and steps in them, so you can see examples in there. And then what you do is you take those, once you've got that idea, and they don't have to change that often, right? You might give them a quick glance when you're doing your prep, but you don't have to think about them. A lot of time they're back of the head stuff, and it's really good to like put yourself to sleep at night thinking about what are your villains up to? What do they want? What are they doing to accomplish it? And depending on what the characters have been doing, their goals and their steps could change, right? Because the character's going to thwart them. How do you reveal that stuff is that grim portent idea. And how you reveal it is in secrets and clues. And those are things that are relevant to your current game. When I have a Freedy Lord named Scrathe who is trying to find the way to resurrect the Nameless King. His goal is to resurrect the Nameless King. And he's got 3 steps that he's going to accomplish, including going and getting his old powerful sword from a vault down in Sunken Revia. Also connecting with the current Knights of the Nameless King to try to find the vault that the Celestial lives in, or that the Celestial absconded to, who cursed the Nameless King. And then like step 3 is actually like, going to the vault. The characters can learn about it. They could talk to cultists who says like, oh, you've never seen this guy, but he's around and he's going and getting a big sword. You can pick those things out and turn them into secrets. And the secrets are things that are exposed in individual games. So that's really how you connect like that idea of grim portents with the stuff that you're only planning for the next session is you have this understanding of what the villains are doing, who the villains are, what they want, and then what they're doing to accomplish that. And then you can turn the visual parts of that into secrets and clues that the characters can discover to figure out what the villains are up to learn that they're doing things, to see things. That's really how those connect. So I hope that helps answer your question. Door D says, have your players consulted an NPC sage to uncover truths, lore, in any of your games? There are so many ways to get information into the players' hands and heads. The real challenge is getting the players to simply investigate by asking an expert in-game, like casting an education spell, praying to the god, or consulting a sage. What thoughts and suggestions do you have to make it obvious to players that there is information out there that they could consult someone with a sage? Tell them that, like, you don't know what this is about, but you do know that Garland Willowmane, who's up at, the Archkeeper, she might have an idea. Or the priestess up at the Shrine of the Three Sisters. It's possible she has an idea. You could always go to the Library of Rasa, and you could consult the tomes there and see if any of the books have things that are there. A lot of times players might not know, and so you can offer suggestions to them, and you can just tell them, like, hey, you've got that. In some cases, they might remember, but in other cases, you have to remind them that they have these sages who are around or who they are. And I think it's totally acceptable to just remind them what their resources are that they might not be thinking about, right? I think that is a perfectly good thing to do. And again, gets into that idea that players only understand about half of what you're giving them. They only remember about half of what you throw in their way. So it's very easy for them to forget. And their characters probably remember, because remember, their characters are fighting for their lives every day. The players are there for like one night a week, and they got to get home before traffic gets bad, right? So there's a different feeling of what the characters would know, and would they remember the people that they could go to, than what the player knows. So I think you could just remind them of the options that they have available, which includes the sages that might know the information that they have not yet discovered. I wouldn't always aim it towards one. I would instead give them options. Like, do you want to go to the library and learn things? Do you want to go talk to the shady vendor who deals in stolen magic items, who might have learned some stuff in his travels? Or do you want to go explore a crypt that you remember might have writings and etchings on the walls? Or do you want to go talk to the high priest who might know some stuff, right? You can offer options to them and let them pick which one of those things they want to do. Offering options, and 3 is usually pretty good. Offering options is a great way to give players agency over the game and still help them move forward with the games, with what's going on in the game. Great Diviner Game says, what section or subsections do you find are often missing in GM guides of TTRPGs you read? Or what is a subsection that you've seen in a book and you wish others had? The number one section that I feel is missing from a lot of books is a monuments section. It's something I focus on a lot in my own writing. I have them in many books. I've added monuments, and I really feel like monuments are and I'm going to show my monuments list in the Lazy RPG system reference document that I've got. So a monument for me is some kind of physical, usually an object, a big object, a stationary object that can act as the backdrop for a location for just one scene. So a monument is not a full dungeon, right? And a lot of RPGs have dungeons. They have locations, and the locations could be an old windmill or a cairn, a crypt, a sundered ship, all kinds of things. But a monument is something a little smaller. Right. And a monument is something where, like, while you're traveling, it's the landmark that you'd have. And if you think about, like, Lord of the Rings, right? At the end of the first Fellowship of the Ring, they're having this big battle against the Uruk-hai. And there's this weird old platform that has a bunch of weird eagles on top of it. They never even talk about who it belongs to or why it's there. But it's this old stone ruined platform that Aragorn is fighting on, right? And it just marks the location. It's just a setting. It's like a backdrop to a play. And I really feel like that's something that is super valuable for game masters. It's really good for travel scenes, right? The idea of like while you're traveling, you could have a notable scene occur at a monument. It's really good for random encounters that you might run into where you don't want to like explore a whole dungeon, but you can find them. It's a great way of having a backdrop to one particular scene. So I have like 20 of these. I'll read them out real quick. And you can see like they are, usually they're bigger than a bread box, right? They're big enough that they don't really move, but they're not so big that you have multiple locations around them. It's just one location around them. Sarcophagus, obelisk, orb, bone pile, skull, megalith, pillars, throne, statues, well, orrery, effigy, arcane circle, spire, altar, pit, fountain, archway, cage, and brazier, right? These are all things that you can use. And then what you do with these monuments, what I really like that you do with these monuments is then you roll things like conditions, descriptions, and origins. Is it a shadowed, unholy, elemental sarcophagus? Is it a ringing, haunted, gnomish orrery? Is it a windswept, ruined, elven pillar, right? You can add these other like adjectives to it to make it something really interesting. So I think that is a fine way to add something to it, and it's something that I would definitely recommend. That's something I wish more books had. GM books in particular don't seem to have these list of monuments the same way that I would like. Friends, I want to thank all of you for hanging out with me today while we talked about all things in tabletop role-playing games. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did and you want to see more stuff like this from me, please subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter. It is absolutely free to sign up. You can find a link down in the show notes. You get a free adventure generator for signing up, and you get an RPG-related article sent directly to your inbox. You can also support me directly on Patreon. Patrons get all kinds of stuff I talked about early in the show, all the different kinds of things that you get. And you can also pick up any of my books, including Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, The Lazy DM's Companion, Forge of Foes, City of Arches, and more on the Sly Flourish bookstore. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and get out there and play an RPG.